Ringo Starr really hated her more than anyone. Ringo Starr was born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940, in the working-class area of Dingle, Liverpool, England. He came from a poor family and became one of the most loved people in music history. His early life was hard, his family had money problems, and he was sick a lot as a child. As a young boy, Ringo spent a long time in hospitals with illnesses like peritonitis and tuberculosis. These sicknesses kept him out of school and delayed his education, but these hard times made him strong and thankful for life. During his long hospital stays, he found his love for rhythm by drumming on tables and bedpans. He didn't know it then, but he was building the skills to become one of the world's best drummers. Before becoming famous, Ringo worked many jobs, including as an apprentice carpenter and a machine operator in a Liverpool factory. But his love for music couldn't be stopped. Inspired by skiffle and early rock and roll, he started playing drums with local bands. He eventually joined Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, one of Liverpool's top bands at the time. His exciting drumming style and happy personality made him special, and by 1962, destiny came calling. When the Beatles' original drummer Pete Best was fired, Ringo was asked to join John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. His arrival completed the band that would change music history forever. As the Beatles' drummer, Ringo Starr became known for his steady, reliable beat, his creative fills, and his unique timing, though he often stayed in the background. His music was vital to the band's sound. Songs like Ticket to Ride, Rain, and A Day in the Life showed his ability to make melodies better with his powerful drumming. Besides drumming, Ringo's warm personality and funny charm made him a fan favorite. He also sang on several Beatles songs, including With a Little Help from My Friends, Yellow Submarine, and Octopus's Garden. Each song showed his friendly, good-natured character and childlike wonder. When the Beatles broke up in 1970, Ringo Starr didn't disappear. Instead, he started a solo career that proved he was more than just a drummer in a famous band. His first solo albums, Sentimental Journey 1970 and Beaucoups of Blues 1970, showed his love for different types of music, including pop, country, and jazz. His 1973 album, Ringo, became a huge success with hit songs like Photograph and You're 16, which topped charts around the world. His friendly style connected deeply with fans, and his work with his former Beatles bandmates showed their lasting friendship even after the band ended. Besides his music, Ringo Starr had a successful career in acting and film. He appeared in several movies, including Caveman 1981, That'll Be the Day 1973, and The Magic Christian 1969 with Peter Sellers. His natural comedy skills and down-to-earth personality made him likable on screen and off. In later years, he also narrated and did voice acting for children's TV, most notably for the beloved series Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. This introduced a new generation of fans to his warm, engaging storytelling. In the decades that followed, Ringo continued to tour and record, performing with his all-star band, a changing group of famous musicians from different generations. His concerts became joyful celebrations of music, unity, and friendship. Mixing Beatles classics with his solo hits and songs from his bandmates, his influence as a drummer continued to grow, with countless artists saying he inspired them with his precision, musicality, and quiet brilliance. For his contributions to music and culture, Ringo was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2018, officially becoming Sir Richard Starkey. This was a long overdue honor for a man who helped shape modern popular music. Ringo Starr's romantic life shows both the chaos of his years as a world-famous Beatle and the lasting love he found later in life. His two marriages, first to Maureen Cox and later to Barbara Bach, represent very different chapters of his personal journey. Each was marked by different emotions, challenges, and personal growth. Ringo's first marriage was to Maureen Cox, a Liverpool-born hairdresser who had been a devoted Beatles fan before she met him. Their story began in the early 1960s, when Beatlemania was exploding across the world. Maureen and Ringo met at the Cavern Club, the famous underground club where the Beatles practiced and built their earliest fan base. Maureen was just a teenager when they met. Despite the overwhelming chaos around the band, their love for each other grew quickly. Ringo, known for his warmth and humor, was deeply attracted to Maureen's grounded nature, Unlike many others drawn to his fame, she saw him as Richard Starkey, the man behind the drums, not just Ringo Starr, the international star. The two married on February 11, 1965. At the height of the Beatles' fame, their wedding caused a media frenzy as thousands of fans gathered outside the registry office hoping to see the newlyweds. Inside, the ceremony was intimate and emotional, attended by close friends and family, including fellow Beatles John Lennon and George Harrison. Maureen's loyalty and strength during those years were remarkable. While Ringo toured the world and faced the pressures of superstardom, Maureen kept their home life going in England, often protecting him and their growing family from the overwhelming spotlight. The couple had 3 children, Zach, Jason, and Lee Starkey. Zach would later follow in his father's footsteps, becoming a respected drummer and performing with famous bands like The Who and Oasis. However, as the years passed and the Beatles broke up in 1970, the couple's marriage began to have serious problems. Fame, long separations, and the temptations of the rock and roll lifestyle took a toll. Ringo himself has openly admitted that he struggled during this time as he turned to alcohol and lived a wild, chaotic lifestyle after the Beatles' breakup. Despite Maureen's efforts to keep the family together, their relationship became more and more distant. Their marriage officially ended in 1975, though they stayed connected through their children and mutual respect. Tragically, Maureen Cox later died in 1994 from leukemia at only 48 years old. Her death deeply affected Ringo, who was by her side in her final days. He later said that she had been one of the most genuine and caring people he had ever known, a true part of his life that he would always carry with him. After years of soul-searching and personal change, Ringo found love again with Barbara Bach, an actress and model best known for her role as the Bond girl Anya Amasova in the 1977 James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. The two met in 1980 on the set of the adventure comedy film Caveman, in which they both starred. Their chemistry was immediate and undeniable. Ringo later described their meeting as love at first sight, saying that Barbara brought calmness, elegance, and emotional stability to his life, a complete contrast to the chaos of his earlier years. Their relationship grew quickly, and they were married on April 27, 1981. In a lavish ceremony at Marylebone Town Hall in London, the same place where Paul McCartney had married Linda Eastman over a decade earlier. Friends, family, and fellow musicians gathered to celebrate the union of two people who had found peace and companionship in each other. Barbara became a major influence in helping Ringo face his struggles with addiction. In the late 1980s, both Ringo and Barbara entered rehab together, a decision that changed their lives. Ringo often credits Barbara for saving him both emotionally and physically, saying that her support and love were key to his journey toward sobriety and stability throughout the decades. Their marriage has remained one of the most lasting and admired in the entertainment industry. Despite the pressures of fame, Ringo and Barbara have built a quiet and meaningful life together, splitting their time between homes in England, Monaco, and Los Angeles. They are known for their shared interest in helping others, particularly supporting environmental protection and addiction recovery programs. Barbara and Ringo also share a deep commitment to peace and love, a philosophy that Ringo often expresses through his art and music. Through the years, the Beatles have been seen as the perfect example of musical brotherhood for young men from Liverpool who changed the world together. Yet behind the fame and unity that captivated millions, tensions often built within the band, some of them running deeper than the public ever realized. For Ringo Starr, the quiet Beatle George Harrison was someone he admired, respected, and played alongside through the group's rise to fame. But over time, personal slights, jealousy, and betrayal began to creep into their relationship, leading Ringo to later admit that he had felt more anger toward George than anyone else in his life. "George was like a brother to me," Ringo once said. "But sometimes brothers fight harder than enemies ever do." Those words carried years of unspoken tension. Though Ringo was often seen as the peacekeeper of the Beatles, his calm exterior hid frustrations that built up through their years of stardom. Ringo had joined the group last, replacing Pete Best in 1962, and quickly found himself in a whirlwind of fame. George, who had been with John Lennon and Paul McCartney from the beginning, often treated Ringo like an outsider, not cruelly, but with the subtle superiority of someone who had been there first. George could be distant, Ringo recalled. He had his own world, his own spirituality, and sometimes he made me feel like I didn't belong in it. The tension reached a breaking point during the later Beatles years when personal egos and creative ambitions began pulling the group apart. George, eager to be recognized for his songwriting, felt overshadowed by Lennon and McCartney. Ringo, meanwhile, struggled to find his place in a band where his musical contributions were often overlooked. There were days, Ringo confessed, when I didn't even want to go to the studio. George and I would barely look at each other. I was tired of feeling invisible. The filming of Let It Be in 1969 captured the strain vividly: silent glances, short tempers, and moments when Ringo simply walked out, unable to handle the tension. But what truly broke Ringo's affection for George came later when personal lives became tangled. Ringo's then wife, Maureen Starkey, was the subject of a brief romantic involvement with George in the early 1970s, though George was also married at the time to Pattie Boyd. The revelation hit Ringo like a thunderbolt. I felt betrayed, he admitted years later. It wasn't just about a woman, it was about trust. It was about someone I thought was family crossing a line you can't uncross. The affair became one of the most painful episodes in Ringo's life, causing deep resentment toward George that took years to fade. I hated him for what he did, Ringo said bluntly. I really did. It wasn't anger that went away quickly. It stayed with me for a long time. George, for his part, later acknowledged his mistake, though not always in the most apologetic way. When confronted, he reportedly told Ringo, "Well, you know, all things must pass." The remark, a reference to his own album title, made Ringo furious, who felt it was a cold dismissal of the damage done. Friends close to the Beatles have said that Ringo avoided George for months after the affair came to light, even when they did see each other again. Their conversations were tense and shallow. It wasn't like we could just pick up a drumstick and a guitar and make it all better, Ringo explained. That wound didn't heal with music. Over time, however, Ringo's deep spirituality and forgiving nature began to surface. As the years passed, he reflected on the meaning of friendship and the pointlessness of holding on to anger. When George fell ill with cancer in the late 1990s, Ringo visited him at his bedside, setting aside all bitterness. "I told him I loved him," Ringo recalled softly. "After everything that happened, I realized that love was stronger than hate. I didn't want to leave this world with that pain still between us." George reportedly smiled and took his hand. And for a brief moment, the years of tension melted away. When George Harrison died in 2001, Ringo was among the first to speak publicly about his friend. Through tears, he said, "George was my brother. I might have hated him once, but I never stopped loving him." That confession captured the complexity of their bond, the fierce emotions, the human flaws, and ultimately the unbreakable tie formed through music and shared history. In the end, Ringo Starr's story with George Harrison stands as a reminder that even among legends, love and resentment often exist together. Behind every harmony sung and every drum beat played was a friendship tested by fame, betrayal, and time, a friendship that, despite its scars, endured until the final note.